At its core, psychology is the scientific study of human thought and human and animal behavior. Many of the questions psychologists ask today originated with the questions of ancient philosophers. Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher.
Each of us has our own unique perception of the world, which is influenced by our life experiences.
Modern psychology agrees that previous experiences act as a filter for incoming sensory data and that this shapes our individual perceptions of reality. Aristotle was a student of Plato's.
The way to understand something is to study specific examples of it in nature.
Modern experimental psychology is built on the process underlying Aristotle's views, drawing conclusions based on specific observations. French philosopher René Descartes refined the theory of dualism, which recognizes a duality or two-part quality to human existence: the body, which is physical and includes the brain, and the mind, which is non-physical. John Locke thought that all individuals are born a blank slate, or tabula rasa in Latin, and a person's experience in the world shapes them and fills up the blank slate.
The mind is as a white paper, void of all characters, without ideas, like an empty cabinet, as yet unfurnished.
His ideas are important to the ongoing debate of nature versus nurture. His basic ideas would later make up the theory of behaviorism. The German philosopher, physician, and professor Wilhelm Wundt is known as the father of psychology because he is the first person to study humans in a laboratory setting. To study them, he used a process he called introspection.
Introspection is a process that requires people to report their conscious experiences in relation to a number of different objects.
His work also led to the idea of structuralism.
Structuralism attempts to break down the concept of conscious experience into its most basic components or structures, and then putting the pieces of the human puzzle back together.
William James was one of many who were critical of structuralism. He was influenced by the ideas of Charles Darwin and believed it made more sense to examine the function or purpose of consciousness.
The greatest revolution of our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives.
Rather than seeing consciousness as made up of structures, James saw it as a continuous flow. He coined the term stream of consciousness to describe it. Mary Whiton Calkins received one-on-one lessons in psychology from William James. The reason for her individualized instruction was that all the males who had been enrolled in James's class unenrolled when Calkins began attending, as a way of protesting the presence of a woman in the class. She completed all the necessary work for a PhD, but Harvard refused to grant her the degree. Calkins nonetheless went on to have a distinguished career in psychology. She conducted early studies on memory and served as the first woman president of the American Psychological Association. She also founded one of the first psychology laboratories at Wellesley College. Margaret Floy Washburn studied under Raymond Cattell, a psychologist who identified 16 personality traits. She also studied at Cornell University and was the first woman to receive an official PhD in psychology. Interested in animal behavior, she wrote the book called The Animal Mind. She influenced later behaviorists, who conducted much of their research with animals. Despite the extreme gender inequality of the times, women had been on the front lines of mental health reform. In the 1840s, Dorothea Dix investigated the living conditions of poor people with mental illness, finding some of them kept in cages, stalls, and pens.
Man is not made better by being degraded.
Her tireless advocacy led to the first mental asylums in the United States.